we're excited about it. We're learning every year. This area to the south, I've never really hunted here much. There's always new areas or new frontiers to get into. 2020 is set up to be a great year. We've left some awesome bucks on the farm.
So now that the crops are harvested, we're immediately starting the planning process for next year.
For 2020, we're going to be really having to hang some new stands, move some stuff around. Every day that I'm on the Grigsby farm, I learn more and more about the farm. And, this place being as big as it is, you could hang a stand every day. You could come up with a new spot and try to go find a location to hang a stand and do it with no problem at all. You can't hang a stand in every tree. We sure try to cover as much of it as we can, but this area to the south, I've never really hunted here much over the years, and it's just an area we just haven't got into. And that's the nice thing about the Grigsby, as big as it is, there's always new areas or new frontiers to get into. And this is an area, after checking some trail cameras and doing some research, some glassing, a little scouting this year, there's more deer back here than I thought there was. And it's not for any reason other than we just hadn't had time. So this is an area I'm going to focus on. I'm going to hang some new sets in here for 2020, and I'm excited about what it might produce because I think we're going to be hunting some new deer on this south end of the farm. Well, I was talking about where I wanted to hang new stands for 2020, but another project we're doing over the next 5 years, I'm trying to every year add 3 or 4 new tower blinds like this Citadel blind behind me to the farm. There's a lot of reasons, a lot of advantages to wanting to have more of these blinds on the farm. One, scent control. We can sit in these blinds with the windows shut, and it allows us to get away with a little bit more, hunting some different winds. Even if the wind's not perfect, you can kind of get away with it up there. If you're sealed up and just open the windows when it's time to shoot. It also conceals movement. So if you get a group of guys, like you might have a father and son, or you got to have a guide sit with somebody, you get multiple people in there, you can hide more movement, get away with a little bit more. And we'll just put them on these locations we know we're always going to have food plots. Like this year, this plot was in corn. This was our red corn plot. We've talked about it all season. And then the big field where the beans are now will be corn. And you get elevated like that, the deer are going to walk all around the blind. Budget-wise, we can't go putting 20 of them out in a year. It's not realistic. But every year, if we add a few more, I think it's going to diversify our ability to hunt different locations and hunt them with a different way. It's a pretty neat setup, and I like having this option. Then when it gets to the late time, when it's colder weather every day, trying to sit longer hours, and you're having to stay on these food sources for the gun seasons or even late muzzleloader, that's definitely where I want to be sitting, because you can get in there with a little buddy heater to stay pretty warm. So it allows us to get out of the elements and maybe put some more hours in on some of these food plots when the time's right. My plans for 2020 on food plots, we've got a lot of stuff happening. We're going to try something new. This year we had a lot of success with our new clover patches. We had 14 new patches we put in, and man, the deer really liked them, and they stayed on them early in the season. It was just amazing how many deer we're seeing on them. So we're going to try our best to continue to diversify the food sources and give the deer more options. So some of these plots I'm going to convert over this year. We're going to try some Roundup Ready alfalfa. And I'm excited about that because it's, again, trying something new and trying to get more food plots that we don't have to plant each year, because that also saves me a ton of time and money. When we're putting all this food in, it gets expensive and very time consuming. So if we can see success with that, we can diversify a little bit with the alfalfa and then continue to add more of these clover patches. And then of course leave in our standing corn and beans and all the strategic spots that we choose to. But like this patch here that we were talking about earlier, I'm going to try to convert that small part over to the alfalfa and then leave the standing crop in the main field or the proper field here. We're excited about it. we're learning every year. We continue to try to make it better, and we're trying to create as much food as possible to keep our carrying capacity at as high a level as possible and keep growing these big deer. Well, we've talked a lot about food and prepping food plots and getting ready, and there's a lot of time and energy put into that. But one thing we haven't done a lot in the past is hunt deep into the timber, because with all the food we have, eventually the deer are going to come to these food plots. And if we just kind of let them have the timber, leave them alone, it gives us big sanctuary areas and we can hold more deer and we're not bumping deer around. But in certain situations, especially when the rut gets going, it's nice to be able to slip into these timber blocks on these ridges and get in here where the deer are going to be and where they're going to spend their day. So I'm wanting to hang some more timber spots this year, but I'm going to do a better job of having multiple ways in and out of these stands and cut some of these walking trails in so we can sneak in quiet and get out quiet and try to get in and out of these timber blocks without really bumping a whole lot of deer. It's going to take some extra effort on our part to do it. I think it'll pay a pretty big dividend, and it's still not going to be these areas aren't places we're going to hunt all the time. But when it's right, I feel like we need to be able to slip into the timber. Well, there's no shortage of stuff to do here at the Grigsby farm. I mean, we've got new tree stands that we've got to get up in some of these areas we haven't been hunting over the years. We're going to be doing some exploring down in the timber, hanging some sets in areas that traditionally we haven't hunted much, and getting these walking trails in and out cut so that we can hunt them on multiple winds and be able to get in and out without bumping a lot of deer. And our food sources. I mean, never really think that you don't have enough food at the Grigsby, but we're trying to diversify the food. And we're going to put in some new food plots in some of the areas. We're going to try this Roundup Ready alfalfa. We're going to be putting corn and beans in places that we haven't in the past. We're going to hang new stands on some of those areas. The deer movement and all the game really, it changes as these crops rotate. And so we've got some stand locations that are going to need to be moved based on the crop rotations this year. One thing is for sure, 2020 is set up to be a great year. We've left some awesome bucks on the farm. We've got some great up-and-comers. A lot of work between now and next October, but I'm excited about it. I can't wait to get it all done, because this is what's fun to me. This is why I enjoy coming up here, being able to manage this property and keep up with these whitetails, and then be lucky enough to have a chance at them in the fall. October's a long way away, but it's really not when you got all this to do. We're going to kill some big ones in 2020, and I can't wait till it starts.
So now that the crops are harvested, we're immediately starting the planning process for next year. And it's a comprehensive approach which starts with understanding the farming system and all the things that are going to need to happen over the course of that growing season. So we're busy today making plans. We've already started to fertilize and have much of that on. So we're just finishing up our decisions on seed selection, and those decisions are driven by trying to create genetic diversity across the farm to spread risk, as well as maturity differences that enable us to move and progress through harvest without finding our crops too dry. So we like to start the season with earlier maturing and end it with full season products. So part of the planning process really tries to spread the risk of the harvest season, as well as the potential for disease, insects with genetic diversity. Being such a large farm, we have to spread our maturity of our crops. So for corn, that could be anywhere from 108-day corn all the way to 120-day corn, which is the benefit that brings to us is early in the season when fall is getting started, we've got crops that are harvestable moisture, but later in the season, by spreading our maturity, then we've got crops that aren't overly dry. Plus the stalked intactness and harvestability that is retained with fuller season products. With soybeans, our maturities range from typically an early group 3 bean to an early group 4 bean. And likewise, we like to start planting season with the early maturing crops to give us a place to start. but we don't want everything getting ready at the same time. So by spreading those maturities as we progress through the harvest season, then we have crops that are just getting ready, and we can kind of stage the readiness of those crops for harvest based on the maturity that we've planted. Yeah, I think part of our planning process, we do an enormous amount of on-farm research here on the farm. And what we're trying to, there's always new things to look at as technologies evolve, as new inputs become available to us. So part of this planning process that's underway is determining what farm research is going to be done into. We're really focused today on a lot of the micronutrients and the timing of application of those nutrients. So we'll be laying out some research trials to help us ground truth which ones can bring agronomic benefit at a and pay for themselves as we use those products. Yeah, this year was a historically wet year. Of course, we've just concluded harvest, and we're really pleased by the results that we were able to obtain. More along the lines of average in terms of yield. But I think one of the things that was unexpected, we've had a little reprieve of the weather here just recently. It's allowed us to finish a lot of the farming activities we weren't sure we were going to get done yet this fall, which has really positioned us well for next spring for a timely startup, which always drives yield. So I think as we look forward to next year, what I'm most excited about, not only the things that we have going on as part of our system, but that the weather's surprisingly cooperated with us here to conclude the year, which has really set us up really well for the start of next year.